Okay, so we're going to start with ankle circles, and we're going to rotate clockwise with the knee or with the ankle. And in the beginning, you might want to send the weight over the non-working leg. And we're just going to do circles, putting our attention down into the foot, into the toes, into the big toe, into the ankle. And imagine we're moving through clay, so it kind of creates a little bit of more stimulus in the tissues there. And then after about 10 reps, we're going to reverse the direction of the circles. And like I say, in the beginning, you might want to keep the weight on the standing leg. But over time, I invite you to begin to start to load the working leg a little bit more as you gain more confidence and as you get stronger in those tissues. And allow the spine to move as well. We're not isolating necessarily just the ankle here. And our second exercise is calf stretch walkthroughs. So before you even step through, I invite you just to kind of create the stretch. I'm using a yoga block here, but you can roll up a towel, something to just to elevate the front of the foot a little bit and feel a nice stretch in the back of the calf. And then, maybe take 5 breaths before you even step through. And keeping that knee almost locked out, not locked backwards, but nice and straight. And we're going to step through. And you can see I'm using a little bit of support here. And over time, I'm trying to use a little bit less and less of that support. So we want to allow the weight to sort of drop down into the ball of the foot as we step through and feeling that stretch at the back of the calf, but stepping through on the toe, on the big toe. Now we've got the third exercise is standing hip cars. So we just sort of raise the knee up to around hip height, and then we rotate. We try to send the ankle up as high as we can as we push back into full hip extension, and then we sort of return to neutral, and then we reverse the movement. So you can see there's an external rotation that's happening in the hip there as I come around. So we go up, kick the leg out to the side, extend back, and then return to neutral, reverse, really externally rotating. I've got a lot of hip limitations, so that's a real challenge for me. And then internally rotate, push the knee back. And I'm really extending my lower back here, really trying to keep a long spine. I'm breathing and I'm not allowing my ribs to flare. External rotation as we come forward, around to the front and down. Internal rotation and back. This is a real challenge for me. I definitely need the support. I invite you to use a door or something solid to use as support for this. You can even do it on all fours. So here we've got toe rocks. So I invite you just to sit on your toes in the beginning, just to breathe in those positions, just to kind of calm the tissues down. It might be quite a lot of sensations in the toes for many people. And again, I'm not using a stick here. I practice this quite a lot, but I really invite you to hold on to a stick in the beginning or a chair, something to give you a little bit of support. So I'm just bending my toes here and I'm sitting on the toes and I'm reaching back, coming back down into a low squat. Playing around here a little bit, just feeling whatever feels nice, whatever feels good. Coming into like hip extension, rolling over onto the balls of the feet, over the toes, and then stretching the top of the feet at the end there. And then reversing the movement, tucking the toes. And you can see in my torso, I'm kind of like aware of my 3 body weight centers, the head, the chest, and the pelvis. And I am... So I'm just going to play around with a few little variations, like touching like one knee down and then the other, just to play around with some different hip angles. So that's just a little something I felt like doing there, but I invite you to try it out. But yeah, so I'm going into full hip extension here, untucking the toes, sitting on the heels, stretching the top of the feet. And I'm like head, chest, pelvis. That's like a wave, if you see, when I come forward. And I'm really sort of like being mindful of my 3 body weight centers. Untucking the toes, stretching the top of the feet, coming forward. Head, chest, pelvis in a wave. And rocking over into a low squat. Extending those hips, hovering those knees. Now you don't have to do that in the beginning. Like, this is quite an advanced version of this. I just invite you just to play around with the pattern using some kind of support and spending time in any positions and breathing, any positions that feel a little bit triggering, spending a little time there. And our 4th movement, loaded ankle dorsiflexion. So I'm just playing around here for a second, but really we just want to be getting into, find a weight that's comfortable for you. This is 12 kg for me. You can just use like, I don't know, a dumbbell or some weight, just a few kilos in the beginning. But it's good to get something with a bit of load because you can really get into dorsiflexion, like flexing that ankle. Breathe there for like 5 long breaths, not allowing the ribs to flare while you're breathing. And then I'm doing 10 reps of just raising my heel off the ground, but I'm actively pulling myself into the front of the foot. Like I'm activating all the tissues at the front of my shin and the top of my foot. I'm sort of actively pulling myself into dorsiflexion, into like a flexed ankle. So there's a lot of intention in what I'm doing. So the clay imagery can be quite good again here, to send a message of like adaptation to the tissues. So again, yeah, like 10 reps of these. Depending what else you're doing, if you're doing the whole thing, I'd maybe just do 1 set of these, but 2 sets of these I would generally do as a warm-up. And a little bit of exploration, just to feel what feels nice, what feels good in my ankle. And a little stretch of the hip. And here I've got like a Thera Band, and I've tied it in a knot and put a loop in it. I put a loop in it and I've just hooked it over my foot here, and then wrapped it around the bottom of my foot. Got it nice and tight so that I can feel a bit of resistance on that. And I'm just going to rotate my foot into inversion and eversion. So I'm turning the foot, trying to get as much twist on it as possible, and then slowing down the return as the band wants to pull me. I'm trying to slow that down, the eccentric part of the movement. And if your foot starts shaking, that's normal. My foot was shaking a lot, especially on the eccentric aspect of it, as I was trying to slow down the return to neutral position. I was experiencing a lot of shaking, especially in the later reps. And yeah, I'd say 15 to 20 reps of these, 2 sets is a nice amount. Yeah, you can see me shaking away there. Here we go. Now it's starting to shake. This is a really good one for if you've got flat feet, like I have, for getting some good strength in the arch of the foot. Okay, so my guess is not many of you are going to have this set up. There's tibialis raises a bit of kit, a tib bar, I think it's called, a tibialis bar. This is really good for loading the front tissues of the shins, which is really good for a lot of ankle mobility and foot strength. So if you haven't got this set up, I have an alternative exercise for you, which I would invite you to do either way, whether you've got this set up or not. I think the tibialis raises are particularly good exercise for ankle strength. So find a wall, lean against it. You don't need to be on the step like I am, but nice straight legs and just raising the ankles up and trying to pull your tops of your feet towards your shins. And you're looking to do 15 to 25 reps and 2 sets. And this is a real burner. Keep those knees nice and locked out. And this one's going to really fire up the front of those shins. Feel the burn. Feel the burn. All right, so next we've got some deep lunges. So we really want to send the knees over the toes here. And if that means that, well, there's 2 ways you can approach this, and I invite you to try both and explore both, whatever feels good for you. Whatever feels good for you. So keeping the heel down on the floor and just going as far forward as possible and as low as possible is one option. And the other one is allowing your heel to come off the floor, but over time trying to get it down. And this is like 2 ways you can increase your range of motion. So in the beginning, if your heels do raise up, that's fine. But we're really allowing the knee to travel over the toes here. And do aim to get as low as possible with your heels down. Well, with your front heel down anyway. And keeping the chest nice and tall, sending the weight over the heel, over the foot. Nice long spine. So this is what we call the Thoracic Bridge, starting on all fours and then rotating one foot through and under, and then lifting the opposite hand off the floor. I usually put it on my chest and extending the hips. So we're hovering that leg. So here we go. We're on all fours with the knees off the ground, shifting the weight, sending that hip through, hovering it, putting it parallel on the floor next to the other foot. So we're pivoting on that grounded foot, pivoting, standing next to each other, and then extending the hips. So all fours, rotating, lifting the hand, swinging the foot through, parallel feet, extending the hips, returning, reversing the movement, and back to all fours. Really nice movement. Make sure that the grounded arm, the shoulder, we're pushing actively. We're very active in that arm, and we're keeping the weight over the shoulder and the shoulder over the wrist. Extend. We don't want to be collapsing in that shoulder. We want to stay nice and active. And when I come back to neutral, into the all fours position, I'm kind of sending my scapula down my back, sort of tucking my scapula into my back pockets, and just sort of doing a mini reset at the bottom of each movement before rotating into the next part. And so here I'm just going to do a stretch for my hamstrings. Now I'm doing a progression here by placing my foot on a yoga block. That is, if that's not available to you in terms of your range of motion, then you can regress that obviously by not having the yoga block. That is going to create less of a stretch. And if that's still not available to you, then you can sit on a yoga block or some kind of raised object to raise your bottom off the floor, which is going to decrease the stretch slightly. And so they would be the three progressions, starting with sitting on a block, followed by no block, followed by block underfoot. And I am really breathing here, and I'm very active in the stretch. I'm basically pushing my heel down into the block, and I'm tensing all the tissues at the front of my hip. So all of my hip flexors, the stuff that's underneath my rib cage and belly, on the front of my thigh. This I'm actually tensing the knee, and I'm pulling myself towards my foot. I'm very, very active. I don't know if you can see it here, but my knee is shaking. And I'm really using the breath just to open up the tissues in the hamstrings and the outside of my hips. I'm breathing deep and long. I'm doing like 2 minutes. I'm really focusing on calming down the nervous system. So it's wanting to shake. It's a little bit afraid of this movement, of this stretch, and I'm just sending the signal to let go and to relax those tissues. 2 minutes is a long time, so that's something I've built up to. You might want to start at 30 seconds and build up to that over time. I'm just going to finish it off with 10 reps of ballistics. So I'm kind of bouncing in and out of my range of motion. And I'm doing this to tell the tissues what I need them to do. Like, it's one thing to stretch, it's another thing to move. And I want to move in and out of the movement to adapt the tissues. Now we're getting into some springy feet here. So I'm just warming up my ankles. This might be enough for you wherever you're at. Just 2-legged hops, like maybe 3 sets of 1 minute. I use that as a warm-up because I'm sort of progressing onto single leg hop now, and this would be the progression. So at some stage when you've got the adaptation and you feel ready to single leg hop, then I'm doing a minute of single leg hopping on one foot, and then I'm going to, at the end of that minute, I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to count from a random number over 100 backwards in sevens. And there's a good reason for this. I want to train myself to be able to balance and correct my posture in a confusing, fatigued context, whilst I'm thinking of other things, because that's when accidents happen.
75, 68, 61, 54, 47, 40, 33, 26, 19, 12.
And the reason we choose sevens is because you have to think about it. You actually have to think about counting backwards in sevens because it's an odd number and there's not a very clear pattern there, especially when you pick a random number over 100 and you change it each time. And then another little progression is forward single leg hops. Again, with all the hopping, I would probably try to do 1 to 3 sets of 30 to 60 seconds. And obviously the closed eyes, balanced, counting backwards things. These are all layers and levels of progressions that you could add over time as you feel confident. We've got an elevated pigeon here. So get yourself into a nice, comfortable, elevated position. And we have obviously very externally rotated hip in the pigeon position. And if you want to regress this somewhat, you can use a yoga block under your knee. And obviously you have different sides of a yoga block depending how much you want to regress it. So the bigger the gap between the knee and the bench, the more regressed the movement is. And obviously you can regress it even further by using hands to support yourself, and the degree that you support yourself with your hands is the degree to which you're regressing. So I've spent quite a bit of time here breathing in an upright position, finding length in my spine, not allowing my ribs to flare. Breathing nice and tall, and then once I feel like I've found my position and like I've stretched the tissues, I am going to hinge, and I'm pressing. I'm very active in my shin, everything between my knee and my ankle is at 100%, pushing into that bench. And I'm pushing myself back up again. And if you want to add it, if it feels right for you, you can add a little twist. This is really going to open up the glutes, strengthen the glutes, mobilize the glutes, and all the abductors, all the tissues on the outside of the hip. And then to finish off, leaning forward into the end range and taking nice long deep breaths here. 5 really nice long deep breaths, just to start to own that new end range. Really breathing here. Obviously I'm using a little bit of support with my hands. And just for fun, some Cossack squat variations. So I'm just clasping my hands here to create some irradiation. It'll close the kinetic chain and exploring my end range. You may not have this available to you. Maybe you need to support yourself with a chair or a stick, but it's still good to find some kind of like way of clasping the hands and sort of creating some tension, even if that's just making a fist. And I'm doing side bends and forward bends here. I'm just exploring, I'm having some fun. One way to create a little bit of safety to feel like you can explore your end range is to that pointed toe that I've got, the extended leg. You could point that into a corner of a room and you could get some like grip, stop the leg from moving. And that's going to really help to also allow you to feel safe to explore end range hip mobility. And we're trying to get our ass to the floor. And there we have it. That is my liquid hips and springy feet mobility and movement sequence. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions or thoughts or comments, please leave a message below. And if you want to see any other kind of tutorials, I'd be very excited to see what you would like to see, and I'd be happy to make them. And just remember that, consistency is your friend, and it takes time. The tissues take a long time to adapt, and this is, mobility is not something that's going to happen overnight. It's something that happens when we revisit these movements frequently, but also recover really well between sessions. And that's a super important thing that not enough people are talking about. We need to recover because it's this perfect little balance of stimulus plus recovery, lots of good sleep, and that's how we create change. All right. Thank you for watching. See you next time.